As promised, I'm going to start making videos that are more topical and not do transition videos exclusively on my channel. So for today, what I felt like talking about is the process I'm going through with my name change. This is a very common experience for all trans people, but what sometimes I don't see people sharing is specifically what was their experience in the region that they lived in. Because what some people do not realize is that it's not just your state that's important, but also how your state is broken up. So for instance, we have counties in Texas, they probably have counties in other states, but I'm not sure how everything works in different states when they're cutting up the state. But I live in a city, a very large one. I live in Houston, and they have counties which are just smaller segments of the city. So we have different governments, different services that are different by county, which also includes things such as the court system. So for name changes in my state in general, they're pretty difficult to get for trans people sometimes. And it's not necessarily that changing your name is an issue in Texas as much as it is some of the more conservative judges, when you give the reason that you are trans or that you were once identified as female at birth, but now you identify as male, they take issue with you changing your name. And sometimes it's not necessarily because they are against transgender people as much as they have issues with being possibly put out in the media as someone who was associated with a trans person, and then you somehow become a spectacle of some sort, like the pregnant man or whatever the case may be. Not that these are correct reasons to prevent someone from changing your name, but these are some of the things that happen. And then sometimes they also just make you jump through a lot of hoops. And another issue is that because sometimes it is difficult because of the specific county that you live in, you really need a lawyer in order to help you. So I know there are other people in Texas that I know, friends that live in different counties, that they had a very easy time changing their name within their county because they got a good judge, or their county is just a little bit more liberal, which is completely fine. But for a lot of people, because they're either unsure or they're not sure about how the system works, or they've heard that it's very difficult with the judges to get their name changed, especially when they want to compound that with getting their gender marker changed, as I am, they have hesitation with doing it alone, and they would like to hire a lawyer. And herein comes what is usually an issue for trans people, that so many of the things that we need that are necessary for our livelihood, for us to be psychologically and emotionally sound, are very expensive. So you already have a $300 filing fee for filing your paperwork, and then speaking with the lawyers that I'm working with told me that $300 is not even how much is less expensive than what they charge a client just to talk to them for an hour. So because of this, I put off getting my name changed, and I also started looking for resources that could possibly help me. And I came across the Transgender Legal Defense Fund, thanks to Gabriel, who's another YouTuber and trans person of color that runs a blog, Dear Cis People. And so I would like to thank him for sharing that, because that's really how we're getting most of our information in our community. You watch a video or you see someone talking about it. There is no really one resource where we can look at all of the resources that are available to us. But anyway, one of the things that they do is that they offer help with name changes. And the help is limited though, because it's only in certain cities. I looked it up and my city was listed there. It's not listed there anymore, so that makes me think that because it's their first time doing this in Houston, that perhaps they were taking people for a while. The list got a little bit long and now they're waiting to catch up, but I still would advise you to contact them if you live in the city and you want to try to get some help. So what I did is that back in October, I called, they took my information, things like social security number, I believe, name, date of birth, general things. Well, actually, I'm skipping a step. The first thing they did was they actually just took my name, phone number, and different contact information and put me on a list. Then once the lawyers were ready to move forward, then they took that other information that I listed and the name that I would want to change my name to. This was back in October of 2015, and they said, well, it will be a wait, which I was fine with. So I waited, and now it is May 30th. Going to be June very soon, so this is quite a lengthy waiting process. And finally the lawyers, they did call me and start getting in contact with me, I believe back in May, maybe late April, but I really believe that, yeah, it was like later April. And they wanted us to start collecting our documents. Once again, this is something that can be problematic for some people because what you're using for support, doctor's letters, not a problem for people that are choosing to medically transition, but for those who have decided that medically transition is not something either that they can afford at this time or it's not something that they actually are interested in, it quickly puts them in a bind because some of these judges really want proof that you're transgender. They really want this medical diagnosis, and that's problematic because for people who identify as trans but they're non-binary or agender, and they choose not to have medical interventions, they're not going to have that type of documentation to back them up. And you should not need that because it's your name. You should be able to change it if you want to, just like your gender marker. You should be able to change that to reflect who you are. So a judge should not say that you must get permission from somebody to basically tell you that that's who you are. That's not true. But anyway, that's what you have to do. The lawyers told me it would be best if you could get a doctor's letter, and then they know I see a psychologist, so they said a letter from your psychologist would be fantastic as well. That way you have 2 doctor's letters pushing, and then also regular things that you need. So you need to get fingerprints done, so fingerprint cards, original copy of your birth certificate to submit to the courts, and all of that was not too hard to get. But what I will make a comment upon is that, once again, cost and time. So I go to a clinic here that's low cost and serves a lot of people in the community, and the issue with the only issue I take with it is sometimes the wait time for getting an appointment. So even though all I was getting was a doctor's letter, they still require me to have a 30-minute appointment. But this is not something that I can book very easily, so it could easily mean that I'm waiting a month or 2 or 3 weeks in order to get an appointment just to get a letter. So once again, there's lots of gatekeeping problems sometimes with just trying to move forward with something as simple as a name change. And then I made a mistake when I went to get my letter, so then I had to make another appointment, but luckily they had one the next week. But it's very hard how sometimes you have to be perfect when you're dealing with all of these issues so that you do not run into all this hardship. And then the next thing that I did was get a letter from my psychologist, which was no problem at all. But then that comes to cost because my psychologist, of course, wants to be compensated for spending time to write these different types of letters, which is fine. But, you know, money is an issue for a lot of people in the community. So you easily have $300 filing fee, and then I had to pay a copay to go to the doctor, right? So let's say for somebody else, maybe that's $25, and then a psychologist letter, maybe that's $75. So this is very quickly becoming something quite expensive, and it's disheartening sometimes because there should be a way for us to get help, right? So my lawyers are free. That's something that I failed to mention earlier. I'm sorry about that. But they're doing this pro bono, so at least I'm not paying for the lawyers, which is fantastic. But what it made me think of when I was talking to them is that they said, well, if you have an inability to pay and we can really prove it, let's file this affidavit. But once again, living in Texas made this more difficult, because in another state, because they told me in another state, New York, for example, they had another client that they were able to get this affidavit and to file this affidavit, and the judge approved it, so the person actually did not have to pay their filing fees because they proved that because of their income, they could not afford it. But in Texas, the criteria is so low. Like basically, I would have to be dying right now and cannot pay it right now, so it does not take into account a bill for next week or anything of the sort, which is sad because I'm a student and all the money that I have is from scholarships, financial aid. I don't have any loans, so all these good things that I've done are actually starting to bite me in the butt because they're like, oh, well, if you had some debt that would have helped. And it's not like the lawyers do not want to help me. They've been fantastic with helping me. It's more so just the system in Texas is just really not about funding things and helping people sometimes. So because even though that money is earmarked for school, And even though I'm pretty sure on any other day, if I told an elected official, hey, I'm going to use the money that was given to me by the government and by my institution for my education and just spend it on something else, I would usually be, of course, chastised for that. But in this situation, I'm being told that's exactly what you need to do because it's money. But that aside, that shows that we still need to do reform here. But also, it showed how much that the lawyers really cared about me, because they went through the process, they looked at all the paperwork and all the possibilities, and they just said they did not feel comfortable filing it, which, that's no problem. But it is sad that you live in a state where basically they're like, if you're not dying and you can pay this right now, even though that money might be for food or anything of the sort, you know, you have to pay. So the next thing that comes up is that I met with the lawyers. They were great people. They were quite helpful, and they were very respectful of my gender, which is something that I really enjoy, because you know, you don't always have those experiences with people. And they were also apologetic that they even had to file things under my legal name, even though that's something I knew would happen. And now all I'm doing is that they have filed everything for me, and next week on Thursday I'm going to Austin to speak to a judge, because my county is just not as liberal as the one in my state's capital, and they've successfully had people's names and gender markers changed there. So we are hoping for positive results there. And I believe I want to make another video to list some of the resources in Texas where people could possibly get legal help for free with this, because I know that without these people being willing to do this, I never would have moved forward with my name change so quickly. So I hope you guys found this video to be helpful. I know it's a little bit long because it's quite a lengthy story, but I'll make more videos like this in the future and try to keep them perhaps to maybe 7 minutes instead of the 12. And I'll see you guys next time.